morning. Moscow issuing warnings to the United States over President Joe Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles to strike targets deep inside Russia. The change came on the same day a Russian missile hit a residential building in the eastern Ukrainian city of Sumy. At least 11 people were killed. 84 others were injured after a Russian rocket hit a 9-story building. The U.S. had long ruled out allowing Ukraine to hit Russia with U.S.-made long-range weapons over fears of sparking a wider war, a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO. But that changed after the U.S. said North Korean troops were helping Russia. With me now to discuss is retired Colonel Ret'd Outzen. He's a military analyst. Good morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Why do you think Joe Biden changed his mind late in his presidency and almost 3 years into this war? What do you make of the timing?
Well, I think it stems from three things. The first is that this has been the escalatory dynamic under the Biden administration. It's purely reactive. So at no point from fear of being seen as the one to first escalate have we initiated something that could reach further or have greater effect. This was the case with anti-armor weapons early in the war. It was also the case with artillery, airplanes, and now with the long-range fires of the ATACMS. But finally, when there is a significant provocation, and in this case, that is the dispatch of over 10,000 North Korean troops to help the Russians try to retake Kursk, then they feel that they can, without escalating, match a provocative step by the Russians. Second is the clock's ticking. There's $7 billion of aid approved that's in the pipeline. The Biden administration wants to get as much of that delivered or in the pipeline, further down the pipeline as they can before they switch administrations on January 21st. And I think that's probably a late step, but it's a positive step. And
to that last point, could Trump pull the plug on this once he becomes president in January?
Well, presidents have the ability to do certain things like halt deliveries pending further assessment or something like that. But once the aid has been approved, and this is all not new aid, this is things that is Congress has approved and that has been ordered and in the pipeline for some time, it would be unusual. And I don't think he'll do that. I think, in fact, for Trump's purposes, if he really wants to end this war, having a big burst of aid get to Ukraine just before he takes takes office is going to strengthen his hand to say, look, Putin, if you don't negotiate, there's going to be more like this coming. I didn't do this one, but I'm not going to stop it, and now's the time to negotiate. So I think it would actually not be in his interest to do that, so I don't see it happening.
Russia has warned the U.S. that this will further escalate the war. What are your thoughts on this, and what risks do you see?
Well, this has been a long-running, really since 2014, the first Russian invasion of Ukraine. At every step, the West has said, well, we don't want to provoke the Russians, right? Because what steps do they have on their escalatory ladder that they could still take? We don't want them to take those steps. But in fact, the West has a much higher threshold and a much higher escalatory ladder if we choose to take those steps. There is a threat that for instance, as part of this new package of decisions, President Biden has also said U.S. technicians, contract technicians, can go to Ukraine to fix aircraft, to fix vehicles, things like that. Now, there is a risk that those could be targeted if the Russians really wanted to step up that. But I think the United States has far more tools, economic, military, diplomatic, in its toolkit, and sometimes forgets that, thus being more timid than it should be. Is there some risk? Yes, there is some risk. The greater risk is what we would do to the Russians if they were to target our people.
Lastly, one quick question. Zelensky himself has indicated that he feels this war is closer to the end than to the beginning. Donald Trump, of course, promising on the campaign trail that he would end this war. What do you see happening over the next 12 months? Do you think that this war could be ending sooner rather than later?
I certainly hope so. I know that that's a priority for President-elect Trump. I think that one of the reasons that the Russians took the extraordinary step of bringing in 10,000 North Korean troops is that before final negotiations or substantive negotiations take place, he wants to retake Kursk, which is the one big piece of Russian territory the Ukrainians hold. So I think this may be the last big operational gambit, and where the lines fall, if Russia retakes it, that prejudices the negotiations in their favor. If they fail to, then they're going to have to give up some territory in Ukraine to get that back as part of the final negotiation. So yes, I think Zelensky's right. We're closer to the end than to the beginning, and this is sort of the warm-up for serious talks to see where that line is going to be when those talks start.
Colonel Rich Outzen, thanks so much. Glad you could be with us today.
Good to be with you.
Meantime, U.S.